Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. If I could sum up all that plant medicines have taught me into one statement, it would best be described as the hermetic law of correspondence, which states, as above, so below. For me, this principle was something that I quote-unquote knew for a long time and could define if someone asked me. However, I had yet to quote-unquote realize it, aka make it real and integrate it for me in my individual experience of life. When I meet others who have so beautifully been able to integrate their plant medicine experiences in a way that has allowed for maximum growth and enjoyment out of life, it beams me up to infinity and beyond, as I truly believe that this is what these medicines were put on earth to do, to assist us in our journey of self-discovery and leaving nothing on the table when we transition out of this realm. Today's guest on the show is someone who, when I first met, it was immediately apparent that he had, in fact, been able to integrate his experiences in this way. He is an extremely talented yoga instructor and offers online classes that can be done anytime, anywhere in the world through the Inner Dimension TV network, is a holistic movement coach where he joins the realms of strength and mobility to aid his clients in feeling healthy and strong simultaneously, and is the man behind ahimsa ceremonial hunting, in which he facilitates for those looking to tap into the sacred practice of hunting to connect deeper to their food, themselves, and their lives as a whole. So please put your hands together and join me in welcoming my man, Mychal Prieto, to the show. Mychal, fantastic to have you back on this side of the podcast.
Fantastic to be on this side of the podcast. Yeah, yes. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. And I think this episode is going to come out before your highly optimized one. So for all of you guys listening, cool. Mike and I did an amazing dive in Highly Optimized as well, which will be coming out pretty soon. And dude, it's so great to have you on this show, man. We were so stoked when we were doing Highly Optimized. We're like, man, we can't wait to hit record on this one time on psychedelics.
Yeah. Totally, man. Very much looking forward to it. Once you brought it into my awareness, I was like, oh yeah, that'll be a fun conversation. So I'm glad we're getting to have it now.
Yes, man. And I'm so stoked to dive into this, man. And, a place that I love going to right in the beginning, and I do this in most episodes, and I feel like it really just works because for me, psychedelics weren't always something that I was interested in, right? I came up in the DARE program days and all of those things. And so for a long time, I thought that acid was going to rot your brain and that cannabis was only for lazy stoners and all of these things, right? And at a certain point, that shifted. And so what I love to figure out is at what point that shifted for you. Like, was it something that maybe you were brought up in, a way that, they weren't demonized? Or was it more so the other way, kind of like what I experienced, where they were, maybe not demonized, but just like kind of looked at as the things you don't do if you want to be successful, et cetera, et cetera. So what did that look like for you? Was it something that was always, kind of looked at as like, oh, those aren't necessarily bad. It's just, do I want to do them or not? Or was it like, ooh, yeah, don't touch those?
Yeah, it was more of a like, don't touch those things.
Yeah. I figured.
Especially, yeah. Especially growing up playing sports, they kind of get demonized. And so, yeah, like yourself, I can definitely relate to that. Like, I was also nervous and afraid, and it wasn't something that I was always interested in, for sure. I think there was always just this like little fear of losing control, which is a funny thing because I'm laughing and you're probably laughing. Yeah.
It's like, wow, what a weird paradox.
You really don't have control over a lot. So there was that. And I think that shift happened for me sometime in my early to mid 20s, I would say. Probably the first time that I ever took mushrooms. And that was an invitation for me to go out to Joshua Tree with some guy friends and camp for the night and have mushrooms and scramble across the boulders at night. And I was like, what, that sounds like a lot of fun. I've never taken mushrooms before, but it was with roommate at the time and his friends. And I was like, yeah, this feels like it'd be fun. Like, I love being out in nature, and I also love climbing the big rocks at Joshua Tree. Bring a headlamp. And so yeah, that was the first segue into it. It wasn't in a ceremonial kind of way, but it was in a really, it was in nature, which is you're in the womb. And I think unconsciously just doing something like that in a place like that, especially in the desert where it's so just like vast as well, underneath the stars, it's like I think I unconsciously just like received and got touched in some ways that now that I'm speaking about it, kind of like the first little intro nudge. So I would say that was like the very beginning of that shift starting to happen, and me just kind of being like at a stage where I was open to trying new things, a little less fearful.
Yeah. And, you said so many perfect things in there. The one is the control thing, right? Like the first challenging psychedelic experience I had, which I'm going to go out on a limb and say an unpopular opinion, which is honestly the best experiences I've had have been the ones that have been the most challenging. And I think when we hear so much about, don't have a bad trip and all this stuff, it kind of gets into our head, that duality that one experience is good and another type of experience is bad. And in my experience, the ones that could be perceived as bad were actually the ones I grew the most from, because I was humbled in a lot of these cases. And so that whole control thing, what I've realized about that is, like we were kind of having a cosmic giggle over, is that first of all, we can't control anything in life, let alone do we want to, because actually life is best, at least for me, when I surrender and I realize that all I have to do, or all I get to do rather, is be present and strap on for the ride, and really like look for the invitations that life is giving me as to what is my next, step in development, or, this, that, the other thing. But, one of the things I've realized in plant medicine experiences is, it really helps you, quote unquote, realize that you don't have control. And I think that's what a lot of people get challenged over, is not that I think it's that they realize, because this is what happened for me. I realized how much I had no control over anything in my life. It wasn't actually the experience that I felt out of control. It was that I was like, whoa, this is giving me a snapshot of actually what life looks like objectively for me, where I think, because my stories and my beliefs, I think that I'm controlling things, but actually I'm not. And it was that dark night of the soul of realizing, who am I without being able to control myself? And then I realized, actually, it's actually a better version of me when I don't try to control things, Yeah,
I'll hold to that.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I've tapped into within that realm is, really being able to, like you were saying, realize how much ceremony is involved in every aspect of life, whether or not we even necessarily set an intention to do these things. If we're out in nature and we're around, the four elements, and we're around, animals and, just different minerals and things like that, rocks. I just felt like it's not rocks, they're minerals type thing from Breaking Bad. Come on. But I digress. But when we're around those things, it's almost like a ceremony in a box, right? Where, I've had experiences that were extremely profound, where yes, I might not have set an intention, but I was in the right, what you could call set and setting, with the right people in nature. And I almost feel like it's basically that it almost kind of does your homework for you, right? Where, you might not necessarily know exactly what you're looking for, but when you're in the arms of nature, you're going to be taken care of in a pretty profound way. And that's what I've experienced anyways.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I too agree with what you said about the bad trip, good trip thing. I think that's just also like a label that we put on things as humans do to feel safe. Oh, that's good and that's bad. Yes to that, no to that, kind of thing. But I really don't believe in that. There's a bad trip. There's something to learn from everyone. And what I think really has an impact on the trajectory of the journey, as you say, is and you said the two words, set and setting. That is huge. And yes, of course, if you're maybe at some club in downtown LA at midnight on a Saturday, and you're around a bunch of people that are drinking and doing other types of things, that's going to be totally different than being out in nature at a national park, underneath the stars. And one where that first one could feel like it was, I had a bad trip, it was this and that. Well, I don't, the consideration there is the set and the setting.
Yes. And that's exactly what I was going to add in, because I remembered that one of my friends actually brought up a good point where she was saying well, keep the duality of bad and good out of it, but like a positive versus like a challenging experience. There's a couple different ways to look at it that I've experienced firsthand, right? Which is like what you were talking about. Like if you're in the right set and setting and you have a challenging experience, you're going to be more apt, at least what I've found in people I've worked with and also myself in my own personal history. I'm going to feel more apt to be able to find how it's happening for me. It might not happen during the experience, but I'll be more quick to after as I'm integrating, be like, oh, actually, this was really good. But if you show up to like the wrong set and setting, right? You're in a club. I've had it at music festivals before where you're around a lot of, challenging energy. Maybe people are working through their own stories. Maybe they don't feel like they're enough and they're going into a psychedelic space and they're entering a little bit of psychosis. Or if you have a unskilled practitioner who doesn't know how to hold the space and you start having a challenging experience and they don't know how to handle it. I'm not going to say that it would be quote unquote bad, but I will say that at least in my experience, it's much more challenging to find the silver thread of how it's happening for you. And I think that's where a lot of people get messed up, especially if they're not really advanced in self-development. Because, one of the things I've noticed is, I've been obsessed with psychology for a while, but it wasn't until I got into coaching and really started the whole business around this that I started being able to almost coach myself out of some really challenging experiences, right? Like out of some, pretty hysterically or like comedically bad situations, right? And I use bad on quotations where looking back on it, I'm like, yeah, taking a strong dose of LSD at a music festival with 50,000 people around you, probably not the best move, right? And hence the reason I made this podcast to talk about these things and tell people you really want to think that out before you do it. I've tested it, and it's a challenge for sure. And at the same time, like being able to now, like I'm very fortunate that I have so many coach friends, and I also do this myself because I have been able to even go back in time and see an experience that I thought of as quote unquote bad and reintegrate it and imagine it as something that actually did happen for me. But it is challenging, and I think that's one of the biggest things. I'm glad you brought that up, is that the less self-development you do, the more that everything else has to be extremely fine-tuned. Like the more you have to make sure your practitioner is on point, the more you have to make sure your dieta is perfect, like all of these types of things, because that's, I think, you're opening yourself up for a million different possibilities. I mean, infinite possibilities on plant medicines. But a lot of the times what you open yourself up to the most, at least in my experience, once again, is all of your quote unquote weaknesses, your shadow, all of these things that you might not be reclaiming in your wholeness and in owning as you. And so when you meet them face to face, it can cause a big identity crisis. It can cause a dark night of the soul. It can cause all of these types of challenges for sure.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. 1000%.
Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show. Hello, everybody. I hope you are all enjoying the show. I wanted to stop by and fill you in on our brand new, completely free to join Facebook community called the Highly Optimized Ceremony Circle. I imagine many of you are aware of our newest creation within Highly Optimized, which is the Connect with Cannabis certification program. Alex and I are having so much fun empowering coaches with the skill set of coaching with cannabis and helping them up-level their coaching practice that we wanted to create a place where anyone could join to ask questions, receive free information on how to work with cannabis in the way we teach in the program, and be able to gain clarity around how to get the best results with their clients in order to become financially independent in their coaching practice. To join, hop over to the link in our Instagram bio and send us a request. It is our intention to assist as many coaches, facilitators, and healers as possible in the important work they are doing in the world. And if you are looking to join a community of like-minded individuals just like you, who are passionate about helping their clients achieve the highest quality of life possible, the Highly Optimized Ceremony Circle is for you. I am looking forward to speaking with all of you in the group, and as always, enjoy the show. One of the things that, you do so well is you integrate yoga. And what I mean by integrating yoga is you do all the branches of yoga. And I forget the exact terminology. Is it branches or is it something at arms? Limbs. I knew it was something along those lines. So you do all the limbs of yoga, which, for me, I've done asanas, I've done, Bikram and things like that. But, I haven't approached the totality of what yoga is. And so my curiosity for you is, how has psychedelics helped yoga and how has yoga helped psychedelics? Because I imagine they have some type of interplay there. And I'm really curious to hear like how those things, help one another integrate into your life.
Yeah. Wow. What a great question.
Yes.
Yeah. Once again, I've never
Guilty
thought about
that.
But
Well, because it's your back end work. I mean, it's really like, the way I look at things like a really, dedicated yoga practice is your integration work. That's what allows you to have more space and not availability, but like space and awareness when you go into an experience. And then coming out of it, it also allows to integrate, I imagine, too, with being able to like, breathe slowly into things, feel blockages in the body related to your experiences. I'm just curious, what might be going on there for you in terms of thinking about it.
Yeah. Wow. What comes to the first thing that I could feel was, for me, when I'm on my mat and doing like the physical asana, or when I'm deep into meditation, when I'm doing breath work, pranayama practices, those more things where I'm in my body, those practices of yoga, it feels like, especially when I'm on the mat too, it feels like totally like sober in the human body, psychedelic experience in its own, like on my own journey. But I'm on a journey on the yoga mat, being instructed or instructing myself and taking myself through things, because I'm so present with my breath. And when you're present with the breath moving in and out of the body, I mean, you get to your home. You're essentially home. That's what home can feel like. And there's a lot of like reflecting and coming face to face with things that I've noticed when I am like on my mat, or the places that I've been able to tap into through meditation and breath work. And as far as like, gosh, in the integration of them both, the influence I feel like that the yoga practice has with the psychedelic experiences, I mean, for one, and this is a major thing, is breath awareness, because as I'm sure you felt and know that like when you're deep on the medicine, breathing is so important, and it can change your reality. Like it can change what the experience is with one breath and one slight little shift of like, oh, I've been shallow breathing for the last who knows, and maybe that's why I went down that like that
rabbit
place
hole.
But like let me take some deep breaths and like, oh, okay, all right, yeah, things are shifting, things are moving, you know. So the breath awareness for sure has definitely, the influence from yoga into the psychedelic experiences. And also too, I've noticed that when I have been on some journeys, when I go into asana practice and I'm tapping, especially like for my hips are pretty, like for the general guy out there, my hips are great. They're open, they're mobile, but I know that like my hips are the most locked up place in my body.
Same.
Yeah. And so I know there's things stored in there. And so what I found is that going into some like yin yoga, or even gentle, but especially the yin yoga where you're really breathing into it and holding for a long time, like I feel like I can go in a journey within the journey when I'm doing that under the influence of a psychedelic, and it's such a beautiful place. And I haven't done like the MDMA or breath work with MDMA, but I have done it with, ayahuasca or psilocybin as well. And and integrating what are called in yoga, the bandhas, which are locks in the body. You have like the root lock, the perineum almost lock, if you will, the abdominal lock, and the chest jaw lock or neck throat lock. And when I integrate those into those experiences, when I'm on the medicine as well, it's like the places that you can go, just like what you're mentioning with MDMA and breath work. Like, what? It's like a journey within the journey, maybe even within the journey,
Dude, it's like It's funny. And for everyone listening, Mike and I were talking a little bit before we hit record about breath work with medicines. And I've interacted with 5-MeO, right? Which we've talked about before, I think we mentioned on the Highly Optimized, but that is like by far the strongest medicine I've ever interacted with. And it's definitely the most frightening. It's the most jarring to me because it just happens very quickly. Yet what happens on breath work or with breath work on other medicines is that scientifically speaking, what you're doing is, and this is, I haven't actually fact checked this, but what I imagine is happening is you're releasing NN-DMT and 5-MeO-DMT, endogenously when you're breathing anyway. And so when you're on something like specifically psilocybin or ayahuasca, that is also a DMT releaser, for lack of a better term. And so what I think is happening is that you're almost supercharging the amount of DMT in your system. And then when you hold that lock, more is happening. More is actually getting loose into your system. And so it's funny you bring up doing it on psilocybin because, I've done it on many different medicines and it's intense in its own unique way for every one of them. But the most intense that I've ever experienced, like the most like yikes that I've ever experienced was on a high dose of psilocybin when I did breath work. Basically, what was happening was my girlfriend and I took a 10-gram mushroom tea. We split it and we had done 5-MeO, I don't know, probably about a month before. There's a lot of like rumors around right now about how long 5-MeO stays in your system. It's a big no-no to do combo after. So the research is still needed to be had to figure out if this was actually a correlation or causation or just a correlation. But I sat down. I asked my girlfriend if she wanted to do it. She was like, nope, because she was already, we were fully sent. It was one of the most intense mushroom experience I've ever had. And so I sat down and I did one round and I was like cosmic giggling about it. Like, oh, this is going to be so fun. Did it and legitimately terrified myself, like whited out completely, had no brain, no mind, nothing, like literally control deleted my whole reality. And then all of a sudden it just came back to everything. And I was just beyond grateful because a buddy of mine had done it on LSD and had told me, because we had done quite a few rounds together. And the last round, he was like, I'm done. And he's not someone to ever say that. And so I asked him later, I was like, hey, was it how far out you went? Because it was very intense. And he was like, no, it was how hard it was to get back in. And that was what I experienced, was that I had zero control over whether or not I ever came back to like my actual being. And I was just like, thank God that worked. But that was like the most jarring it had ever been. With medicines like MDMA, you still go very far out. And there is still a little bit of that, like, all right, I might be good after this one type feeling. But it's more of like just unbelievable, immeasurable euphoria to a level that I literally could never put into words. Like, it doesn't even make sense. I never knew, like, I lived in this body for a lot of years before I ever knew that button existed. And it's just something I share with everyone because it definitely can be intense. And for anyone listening, make sure you are safe when you're doing it. But it's an experience that for anyone who's interested in these medicines, it's something that is worth exploring, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I would recommend, having somewhat of a breathwork practice going into it. Don't let that be the first time or the second or third time you're doing any kind of breathwork.
Yeah, because it can be, breath work is intense when I'm completely sober.
Yeah.
I do Muay Thai, and my trainer, before we start, every time will rock around a breath work, and it will be like some CO2, nitric oxide breathing mixed with CO2 retention mixed with like a straight Wim Hof session at the end. And I've had some experiences where, for anyone listening, if you haven't done this, sit down at least, if not lay down. I'll be sitting with my back against a wall, and there are times where like, the second I take that last breath and I start to squeeze, I can feel myself going out already. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be an intense one. And most of the time I don't even need to like really squeeze. I do like a fraction of a second and I'll literally feel myself just going to, I don't know where, the other side, home, whatever you want to call it. But it's a very similar experience to 5-MeO-DMT, just much quicker and not as, I guess the right word would just be quicker, right? It's not as like prolonged. It's not as like whole body like vibrating for like minutes upon minutes. It just happens for about 30 seconds, but it's very intense for sure.
Yeah.
One of the things I love diving into in this show is some of your most profound experiences, right? For most of us, there's one experience that comes to mind where you're like, that one definitely changed things. It shook things up a bit. What was that experience for you? Tell us all about it. What was it like? Where were you? Like, what happened during that experience?
Great question. And such a great, like, I'm smiling big just thinking about it.
Yeah.
That would have to be, it took place pretty recently, January in Mexico. And I, through a really dear friend of mine who's living in the Yucatan Peninsula, her and her boyfriend, they study with the same teacher, which was how they met, a medicine man down there. And after my Costa Rica trip and retreat, I was going to Mexico. I didn't know how long I was going to be staying in Mexico, but I just knew that I was going to be staying with my friend and her partner for like 3 or 4 days at least, because they invited me. And this was the friend who we used to work together back in LA, and she actually took me through my first ever ceremony, which was Ochuma, and that was really beautiful. And so a really dear and trusted friend, and she's just an amazing soul. So before I took the flight over there, she was like, "Hey, if you're interested, I'll set up a Shanga session with her teacher." And I was like, "That sounds amazing. What is it?" And then she told me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing." Like, I just, the month before in December, smoked 5-MeO DMT for the first time. And that was, I mean, that could also be talked about in itself, but I'll do the
It's literally
one.
bonkers. Like, there's no explaining 5-MeO DMT. Like, people ask me and I'm just like, I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah. Not too many words. And so I was like, yeah, it sounds like a great idea. Anyway, so I get over there and we get to the room where we're going to be sitting, a really beautiful room, and there's tapestries and instruments, and it's got like, there's a lot of ceremonies that take place in that room. It's a really beautiful place, and there's this big poster of Yeshua up front, and he's just got the mudra, and it's very welcoming and inviting, a huge gong. There's this big tapestry of a huge mushroom, like just a regular shaped, mushroom with this beautiful like lines all around it. And so, just felt really, really welcomed as we walked in there, asked permission to enter, and entered, and everything was in Spanish. And my Spanish it's not fluent. So I was catching and understanding what I was. And then also my friend was helping to translate. So it was myself, my friend and her partner, and the medicine man. And, he kind of explained how things were going to go, this and that, blessed us before the rose water and everything. And then served us sananga and hape. So we were just like, all right, cool. Yeah. And I still didn't know exactly what to expect. And I was like, all right, well, if this is anything like that was, I know that I'm going to get blasted off. And he said, going into it, we're going to do 2 rounds. And I was like, wow, we're going to do like 2 rounds. All right.
It's like, okay, cool. If you say so.
Yeah. So, we sit down and I'm getting served first. And he said that, when you take this first dose, this is going to be the first time that you've had the presence of her in your body. So, sit upright, try and sit upright as much as you can, be present. And it's like, all right, cool. And then he showed me, it was through this little glass bong, and it was, he packed everything in there. And he showed me how to do it. He's like, are you going to take 1 inhale and then take a sip of air, take a second inhale, sip of air, third inhale, sip of air, hold it, and then release. So I was like, all right, got that. So, set up in proper posture, and he approaches me and then lights it. And I start to inhale, take a sip, inhale, take a sip, inhale, take a third sip. So like my lungs, I didn't even know my lungs could expand that much, but my lungs are fully expanded with that. And then I exhaled out. And as soon as I started to exhale, it was like the sound, I could see the sound of folding cards, like shuffling, folding cards in that kind of way. And suddenly, like, and my eyes slightly opened, I could see the room starting to like take more geometrical shape and pattern, if you will. And there was still smoke in the bong. And so without saying a word, he just like nudges it closer to my face as to like clear it.
Yeah.
And so, cleared the whole thing. And I think like before I could even get to the top of that inhalation, or before I could even exhale out, like I was blasted off. And immediately for me, it was like I could feel the bliss of it, and then very quickly started to dive inwards, downwards, and a little bit darker. And that was a reflection of where I'd been in my head recently, because I've been going through, for the last few months, been going through a split and relationship. And there's been some in my own created, like, a little bit of guilt and shame, just a story that I was telling myself. And so I was quickly taken to that place, is what it felt like. I was quickly taken to the root of those sensations and the depth of those, taken to like how those feel at the core. It was nothing good. It was nothing. It was not a place that I wanted to be. It was not, it was just like, I got confronted with it face to face. It's like, this is what you are doing to yourself every time you tell yourself this story, and started to get a little bit fearful. And then I felt like my spirit just completely relaxed and released, and just like, and as soon as that started to happen, I started to feel this shift. My eyes are closed this whole time. I started to feel this shift of like very, very deep roots, and then starting to slowly, just like water, the way that tree would absorb water, like starting to rise upwards through everything. And then all of a sudden things started to get a little bit lighter, started to grow upwards, and then it started to expand out like branches. And next thing I know, like I'm seeing more light. There's more light in my vision. It's not as dark, and I can feel more joy. I can feel more bliss starting to come. And I feel like that was, now that I'm speaking about it, this is how you can transfer and transmute that story into something more positive, more uplifting, more beautiful. And instead of telling yourself that story, send love, be in a place of love, be in a place of compassion. As soon as that started to happen, I started to like kind of come back into my body, that those like moments that are, you're like, oh wait, like I have a hand, fingers. Like,
yeah, these are my fingers.
Like,
I remember these.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. This really like unfamiliar, familiar sensation of like remembering that you have a body, and starting to come back in my body. And I didn't realize, but I had like kind of drooled a little bit, and I was like,
what is this?
Slowly coming back. Yeah. It's like, how did I get wet down there?
Yeah.
I thought for a moment that I'd peed myself. But I didn't. I was like, oh, this drool. I'm climbing back into my body, and I can start to hear sounds. My eyes are still closed, and my spine starts to get a little more upright because my head was kind of hanging. And all of a sudden I start to feel my right arm. It felt like, like there was a string, and something was just kind of like
pulling it up.
And I'm feeling that as my eyes are closed, and I'm thinking in my head, like, what the fuck? It's like, whoa, wait, let me try and like control this real quick. And I moved my arm back down, and I was like, let me completely relax it again. And it started to just like drift back up. And I was like, whoa. My eyes are still closed. And then all of a sudden I start to feel my other arm starting to do the same thing and rise. And I was like, oh, I think she's telling me to get up, to stand. And so I just listened. I just followed it. And it felt like I wasn't even moving. It felt like it was moving through me. And it was such like, I'd never felt anything like that. I'd never felt my body being moved by something other than myself, And that started to come up into a stand, and I started to stand. And once I got like into a tall spine, my arms and my hands were starting to move together and apart. And it felt like she was moving me through Tai Chi Qigong.
Yeah. Movements. I was just thinking that with your hand motion. I was like, that looks like Tai Chi.
Yeah. And then I'm at that point, I'm just fully like, I'm letting go. I'm releasing. I'm just being moved and enjoying where I'm seeing this movement go. And it was just like a lot of like qigong and breathing, and like the way that my hands were moving and arms were moving. It was like, it was so fluid, and it was so gentle, and it was so soft. And I was tripping out. I was like, what the heck? Like, I never felt anything like that. Like, wow. And it was so beautiful. And I remember feeling just so good in my body as it was doing that. And it was moving and it felt like it was getting energized. And then started to come back even more into my body, started to just like kind of that turned into like a release and like a shake, some like really rapid shaking of the arms and of the legs.
Tremors.
And yeah, in a really beautiful way. And it took me to the master plant that I dieted, which is called Chiricsanongo, back in October. And that medicine, doing a dieta with it is one of the things it's known for, is to help to remove the cold, help to remove the chill from the body and like the deepest layer. And it can be described as like feeling so chilly within the marrow of your bones. So not like externally, but like so deep internally. And when I was in that dieta, there was a lot of like, after the first night of ceremony, is a lot of shaking. And I was shaking my body like I had never shaken my body before in my life. Like my fingers, my hands, my wrists, like every little joint possibly. And it was like, it felt like the cold and what was no longer needed in my being to be like shaken out on such an energetic, like chill level. And so I got taken back to that place during the Shanga. It felt like that was a release of like that story. Like, let's remove that. Let's flush that out, you know?
Yes.
And it's immediately after that shake for a while, it just felt so calm, so light, so grounded. And then I started to sit back down and then I was getting fully back in my body and was like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
Like,
I've never found that button up until now.
Just go. Yeah. It was like, all right, we'll do the second round soon. And I was like, oh shit, like we still have to do a second round. Like, oh my gosh, what? So I needed to use the restroom. So I asked to use the restroom and walked out, used the restroom. And as I'm getting back and walking back into the ceremony space, the switch just went off in my mind and was like, you're not going to take that story back in this room with you again. Like that just got removed. That just literally got flushed down the drain. Like that is no longer in your system. Walking back into that room free of that. You're not carrying that with you. And I was like, cool. Took a pause right in front of the Yeshua poster. So it was like, yeah, like got my back. Cool. Felt so good walking back in there. And then it was round 2. And so, you know, again, I get served and medicine man says, you know, for this second round, you know, feel free to, if you want to, you know, she's in your system already. If you want to lay down, if you want to stand up, if you want to sing, if you want to dance, if you want to open your eyes, like whatever you're feeling called to do. So it's like, all right, cool. So sit upright, take the inhale, and then exhale everything back out. And then again, started to feel the sound again and just things started to shift and eyes closed. And as I'm feeling like the presence and the essence of it, I'm quickly reminded to like, something is just like, open your eyes. And so I opened my eyes. Oh, and I had gotten to stand up. So before I opened my eyes, it was like guiding me to once again stand back up. So I come onto all fours, and then I'm just like, all right, here we are again. I'm standing. Like, now what? And then it was like the open your eyes switch. And so I opened my eyes, and I had my arms out in front of me, and I'm looking at my arms, and I've never seen this before in my life, but the skin, my flesh was kind of like fuzzy and soft, but all around it and covering it, and my fingers and everything were geometrical shapes and patterns. And as I started to slowly move my arms, I could see energy, I could see chi, I could see my hands moving that through space and it moving around my hands through space. And I'm just mind blown at that point. I'm like, what the heck? I'm seeing this with my eye. Like my eyes are open right now. I'm seeing this. Like, what? And then suddenly my body starts getting taken through this really like fluid, like water motion with the arms and in my spine. And just like, I closed my eyes for a little bit just to like tap deeper into the feeling of it. It was very like serpent-like and fluid-like. And then I quickly opened back up my eyes and seeing my arms still like covered in shapes and patterns, and just like, this is the most beautiful thing that I've ever experienced before in my life. What? And then I kind of get guided to shift my body and bring my eyes to that mushroom tapestry. And all of a sudden, then my hands get just guided right to like a prayer and right into just a deep bow. And so I'm holding that bow for I don't know, a few deep breaths. And it felt like it was just a bow of respect and because it's a really powerful medicine. It's medicine that's been such an ally to me, and I know is going to continue being an ally to myself and others that I get to experience and that get to experience myself. So it was like take a deep bow to this medicine and always use it with integrity. Always serve it with integrity. Always be with it in integrity. And so I start to rise up from the bow, and all the lines that were around the mushroom itself started to turn into shapes of abuelas, of chiefs, So I'm seeing now the faces of grandmothers, and I'm seeing chiefs in headdresses, and I'm feeling the essence of Maria Sabina. And it's just like powerful and potent. And I'm just like, oh man. Like, yes. I'm looking at these with my eyes, and it's just like, wow, I'm seeing what I'm seeing right now. This is incredible. And then all of a sudden I start to then go back to the fluid movement of my spine and my arms. And I'm just like, I'm enjoying every moment of it. And I didn't know that my body could move like this. Like, I move my body in so many kind of ways, but never in that like really feminine kind of fluid ish. It doesn't have to be feminine, very masculine too, the way I was doing it, but flowy. It felt, it had a really nice essence to it that was so beautiful, and it felt feminine, And after that, just coming back down into a seat and just literally having my mind like completely blown as to like, what did I just experience? Like, what? I saw that with my eyes. I felt that in my body. I felt that in my being. Like, what? I've never seen. I've heard of the geometrical patterns and shapes and stuff and people's visions and all of that, but I had never experienced it to that degree before in my entire life. Well, the 5-MeO DMT ceremony, the month before, I felt I could see like a bunch of triangles. As soon as I started to go deep, it was like triangles. Yeah. But like this, surrounding my arms and my hands and feeling and seeing energy move around me and me moving energy was just, I can't unsee that, so powerful.
What's up, ladies and gents? I wanted to take a second while I had your ear to share with all of you a very important announcement. Anyone who has been listening to the show for some time now knows that I am passionate about coaching and helping other coaches up-level their coaching practice. What I have noticed in working with hundreds of coaches is that coaches of all different types are facing challenges with being able to get their clients strong, consistent results, understand where to put their energy to allow their practices to thrive, stand out in the vast sea of coaches, move from imposter syndrome into trusting themselves, and ultimately make the money necessary to be financially independent in their coaching practice. The root of these issues comes down to a lack of connection with your creative force as a coach and entrepreneur. This is why we at Highly Optimized have created the Connect with Cannabis 10-week coaching certification program. The reason that cannabis is the focus of our program is because cannabis acts as imagination medicine. And in order to break free of these challenges, you must first be able to imagine yourself as the coach that is successful and has been able to break free of these challenges. When you are able to truly imagine and connect with the most powerful version of yourself, you can find the clarity to build your business, your authentic voice to speak directly to your clients, and the faith that you can overcome everything standing in your way. Once you have experienced and learned how to achieve these results for yourself, you will be able to offer this same unique skill set in your coaching practice to support your clients in overcoming their limiting beliefs and allow them to experience the breakthrough results that will make you stand out as the world-class coach you are. In this program, you will learn the science behind cannabis, how to experience the healing powers of cannabis, and how to facilitate these healing powers with your clients. With personalized one-on-one support on how to apply these frameworks into your business, and weekly group calls within a community of coaches just like you You will be equipped with a unique skill set that will allow you to get consistent, powerful results with your clients, feel confident in your coaching abilities, and allow you to gain financial independence while having the opportunity to wake up each day excited to share your important work with the world. For anyone listening who is hearing the call to set yourself apart and develop a unique set of coaching skills not found anywhere else in the world, jump over to the link in our Instagram bio and book a complimentary call with me today. Together, we will go over your current challenges in your business, your goals for your business, and decide together whether you qualify for a seat in the program. The next class begins April 20th, and spots are filling up quickly to be a part of the budding movement that is cannabis coaching. So book your call today and position yourself as a leading voice of how to work with this sacred plant medicine in your practice. Thank you all for your continued support and enjoy the show. Dude, my friends and I, when we have a deep experience, one of us will always come back and play the comedy role quickly or first, where one of us will say, well, this changes everything, and it's kind of that like comedic relief where everyone's kind of like, yikes, this is like, wow, I just had a firmware update essentially. And, you were talking about a couple of things in there that I want to touch on real quick. This whole idea of the tremoring. The tremoring is actually, it's a whole art form called tension and trauma release exercise that you can do. And there's certain stretches you do. They're not really stretches. They're like minor activations. You get your muscles directly to the point, like below, like starting to fatigue. But like you'll do a glute bridge, say, for instance, right until you start to feel your legs shake a little bit. Then you'll come down. And after you do a couple of them, your body will just start shaking and you'll just start letting stuff out. And what it is it's tension and trauma. If you see a dog almost get hit by a car, you'll see that dog like shake it out, right? You see this with animals all the time. There's a video online they show for this. I think it's like a zebra gets away or a gazelle gets away from a lion, and you see it like just shake all of it out, and then it continues going. But what do humans do? Like kids, you'll see them do that, right? There was a famous experiment. The guy who made or like invented or found, I don't know, he didn't invent it, but the guy who found out about this, he was looking at, I think it was during World War II, and there were people in bomb shelters. And he would notice that whenever there was a bombing, the kids would all be shaking and the adults would not. And when he started asking them, they were like, no, we feel that. We're just not doing it. Like, we're just not, like, we don't want to do it. Right. Like the adults would feel that tremoring sensation, but they wouldn't do it. And so he started noticing that eventually starts putting stress on the body when you don't let that out. And so for anyone listening, tension and trauma release exercise, TRE, it's absolutely amazing stuff. And I notice it too. I mean, I used to ask myself all the time, why do I shiver so much when I'm coming up on psilocybin? Psilocybin happens specifically so deep in my core that it feels like my hips are shaking, almost going to shake apart sometimes. And what I realized was like, no, I got a lot of stuff in there that my body's ready to let go of. And the whole old story thing you were talking about too, like it's so powerful what these medicines can do. And this is one of the main ways I use cannabis these days, because cannabis, what I really feel about it is the people psychedelic, because you can go just over the threshold where, yes, you're on technically a psychedelic, but you're able to like be a functioning human, right? Like you don't necessarily need to like take time aside, make sure you have the right perfect set and setting, all these things. Yeah. Of course, the better set and setting you have, the more ability you're going to have to get downloads. But I was doing this last night with my girlfriend, where we were doing this certain coaching modality that we use called the model, where essentially first you'll start looking at a circumstance. So the circumstance could be like, let's see, like, okay, mine was feeling enough, right? Like feeling like I'm enough. That's the circumstance, the neutral fact, feeling enough. And then you go in from there, then you go into the thought. So the thought form that was presenting itself was, I am not enough, right? Like I need to do more. I'm not doing enough. All of these thoughts. And so the whole idea of this is an awareness exercise. So you take that circumstance, which then leads to that thought. Then what feeling does that give you? It gives me the feeling of like frustrated, anxious, impatient, right? Those kind of feelings. And then you look at the action you take. What is the action I take in that, in this model? I try doing a bunch of shit, right? And then I burn out because I do too much. And then what are the results? Burnout. So you can start to actually look at exactly what you're in and go, holy crap. I now know that when I'm feeling that way, the only result I'm going to get is more of what I don't want. So it's a way to almost look it directly in the eyes. And it seems like that's exactly what you went through in your like story removal, is you were able to see it were once you were blind. You were able to see like, no, I'm done with that. Like, thank you. It served its purpose, but I'm done with that. And so I just wanted to touch on those because it's so beautiful, man. And dude, I wish we could rock for so much longer, but I want to make sure before we take off that people know where to find you, where they can contact you, man. I'm so excited for everyone listening. Me and Mychal get to meet in person next month at Paul Check's Sound Healing Workshop. I'm so pumped. So dude, tell the people where they can find you, where they can get in contact with you. Again, for everyone listening, you know, Mychal was so amazing. He went into his whole backstory of ahimsa ceremonial hunting and all the other stuff he does in the highly optimized. But this one, we wanted to dive down the rabbit hole. So Mike, where can people find you, man?
Yeah, thank you. Website or Instagram is Michelangelo. And then like you mentioned in the beginning, for anybody who wants to dive deeper into yoga and meditation and pranayama practices, I have an animal flow series on there as well.
Oh, hell yeah.
InnerDimensionTV.com. Yeah, it's great. You can do a 7-day or a 10-day free trial. There's amazing teachers on there. It's a small group of teachers, but they're all just absolute gems of humans and beautiful souls. So any one of those places, yeah, I'm so looking forward to you coming into the West Coast next month. It's gonna be such a good time. I'm looking to the workshop as well.
I'm on an average of once every 3 months at this point. I pretty much live on the West Coast. You know, I'm bi-coastal at this point, you know, not awesome. Literally, but it feels like it. I'm like, oh, wow, I haven't been here for like 12 weeks. I'm back again. Cool. So
amazing.
Dude, if someone listening was just swayed by you to experience psychedelic medicines for the first time, what is the one piece of advice that you would suggest to allow them to have the smoothest experience possible?
I think I just did it, which was breathe. Breathe. Just breathe. Yeah, it's such a tool that we have at our arsenal when we're in those spaces. I mean, there's so many other things, but breathing, you know, the breath, because there's a direct correlation, I think, there to the nervous system. And when we can breathe continuously and smoothly, we're tapping into the parasympathetic nervous system. When we're in shallow breathing or not breathing, you know, sympathetic, fight or flight, you know, and all of those other things that can then sprout up in your awareness in that state. Yeah,
I love that.
Just breathe, baby. Just breathe.
Yeah, just breathe. Okay, guys, I'm sure you all know by now how much I enjoy having individuals like Mychal on the show. Mychal's dedication to not only connecting with these medicines sacredly and with reverence, but also in having practices such as yoga, in which he can integrate the lessons he has learned into his day-to-day experience of life, is something that has allowed him to see all of his experiences, even the ones that have challenged him, as happening for him rather than to him. For anyone listening who felt called after hearing Mychal speak to dive into his work and learn from him, make sure you hop over to his Instagram profile and or his classes on Inner Dimension TV to begin that process today. Mychal, thank you so much for being a warrior of the light, for sharing your time and wisdom with us today on the show, and for being a guide for so many in how to take charge of their lives and create the most beautiful experience of life possible. And until next time, my brother, may your journey be smooth and full of light. Aho.